Okay, confidence intervals for means. So we did our Desmos example about Hurricane Katrina. We saw what happened there, where we had to take a cluster sample, and we found the average of 137.7. And we didn't know, we knew that wasn't for sure the average in every single section, but we found a range of numbers that provide a reasonable estimate. We know it's somewhere around 137.7, and that range of numbers is called a confidence interval. Okay, and we talked about how we interpret a confidence interval. All right, that it's a range of numbers. We are some percent, usually 90, 95, or 99 are the numbers we use. Those are just the most common ones. All right, and so we're 90 or 95 or 99% sure that our true population mean is in that range. Okay, so now what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to calculate some confidence intervals. All right, so here are the steps. We have to find the point estimate, which is just the mean of the sample, like we did with the Hurricane Katrina data. We found a mean number of people in each section. We're going to identify the level of confidence that's going to be given to you in the problem, and the z-score that is associated with that confidence level. I'm going to show you those numbers in just a second. Then we calculate the margin of error, and then we'll take our estimate mean and we'll add and subtract the margin of error to give us a range of numbers. Okay, so formulas. Margin of error formula, all right? Z sub C, that is the z-score that is associated with the confidence interval. So remember I told you 90, 95, 99. Those are going to be our most common ones. These are the z-scores that go with those confidence intervals. So if I ask you to make a 90% confidence interval, you will use 1.645 for this Z sub C number. Okay, S is the standard deviation. Sometimes it's given to you in the problem. If not, we can find it using the standard deviation function in Desmos, or your like Casio or TI handheld calculator. We do 1VAR-STATS like we did earlier in the year. And when you do that, I want you to make sure you're using the one that says SX. You will see when you do that. So the 1VAR-STATS in your calculator, there'll be two numbers. There'll be one that's a sigma x like that, and then one that's SX. This has to do with whether the data is from a population or a sample. And so because we're talking about sample data, we're going to use the one that says SX. So we've got some data here, okay? We looked at a number of friends that people had on a different social media site. Okay, so I'll tell you there are 40 numbers here. Okay, so we went through and randomly selected 40 people and found out how many friends they had on this social media website. And now we're going to construct a 95% confidence interval for the average number of friends that users have. So the first thing we need is the point estimate, or the mean of this sample, the average number of friends. So a couple different ways you can do this. Old school, add them all up, divide by the number that there are, or you can use your calculator or Desmos. I prefer Desmos because you can copy and paste things. It makes it a little bit easier, but you do whatever works for you. So I'll show you how to do it in Desmos. All right, so I've got my numbers copied over and I need the mean. Okay, so if I go to the front of my list of numbers, there's two ways you can do it. If you remember what to type, you can just type mean. All right, but if not, click on the keypad and go to functions. And then I'm gonna scroll down to statistics and it's right there, mean. So if I click that and put it in front of my list with everything separated by a comma, it tells me that the mean is 130.8. Okay, so my X bar is equal to 130.8. Confidence level given to us in the problem, 95%. Okay, and so the Z sub C that we're going to use, I'm going to go back to this list. We're doing a 95% confidence interval, so I'm going to use this Z-score right here, 1.96. All right, so Z is 1.96. All right, so margin of error, we're going to use that formula. So the formula for margin of error is right here, okay? Z sub C times S over the square root of N. Make sure I got that right. Okay. All right, so we can do it old-fashioned way. We can plug it in. All right, so z sub c is 1.96. That's my z-score times s. So again, we're not given the standard deviation, so let's use Desmos again. Okay, I'm going to erase this mean, and I'm going to go back to my functions list and scroll down to statistics, and you see there's two, STDEV and STDEVP. We want the one without the P because we want this, that's P's for population, and we want the sample. All right, so there, my standard deviation is going to be 52.6. All right, and I'll always tell you what to round these things to. All right, so 52.6 over the square root of n. N is the number of people that we have in our data set, okay, and that is 40. All right, so we would be doing that in the calculator. If you're going to do a bunch of these problems at once, like on practice problems or a test, here is a little helpful hint for using Desmos. Okay, so if I go in Desmos, I can actually type the formula. So I'm going to type E is equal to Z, because we have to put in a z-score, times S over the square root of n. Okay, and if you see there, Desmos says, do you want to add sliders? Okay, so if we click all for that, that means you can actually just leave this up and go through and enter the numbers. Okay, so our z-score that we were using was 1.96. Our S, our standard deviation, was 52.6, and then our N was 40. All right, and then there Desmos has done the math for me. My margin of error is 16.3. All right, so my E is equal to 16.3. All right, and then the last step, we're going to find the edges of the interval by doing our point estimate plus and minus the margin of error. So I would have 130.8 plus 16.3 and also 130.8 minus 16.3. Okay, so let me do that math in Desmos. I'm going to come down here, 130.8 plus 16.3, and then 130.8 minus 16.3. Okay, so there are the edges of my confidence interval, and we're going to put the lower number first, and we're just going to write it in parentheses. So my confidence interval would be 114.5, comma, and then that other number in Desmos was 147.1. Okay, and so that is my 95% confidence interval. And then remember, we talked about how to interpret that. I can say that I am 95%, all right, because that was the confidence interval that I used. So I am 95% sure that the true average number of friends that people have on this social media website is somewhere between 114.5 and 147.1. Okay, and then I just like this on Desmos because now if you're going to go do some more problems, you can literally just go through here and change your Z, S, and N, and this will stay up here for you. So you can use a regular calculator and just plug and chug like this, but things get tricky with parentheses. So just like last unit, I would recommend using Desmos. It just works a little better. All right, and that is it for confidence intervals for means.